So I don't want to be here. I want to be where I want to be. And when I come downstairs in the morning, I'm here. And this is exactly where I want to be. But really, all I want is wanting. So I couldn't possibly be happy anywhere. Unless it was real fun at the time. When you turn on the camera, it can't help but be real fun at the time. We're going to listen to a recording, the young poet, Go Kassan reading. Go read at R2B2 Books earlier this month. He's 24, lives in London in the United Kingdom, and where he's studying architecture. He was born in Singapore. His father, Gopal Singh, is a writer too, and they gave a reading at R2B2 a couple weeks ago. So that's going to take up the whole hour. We'll be back in half an hour to chat and then play the second set of Go's reading. Right now, let's just listen to a young writer in English from Chinese background, Go Kassan.
From Singapore, Southeast Asia. And that's the background for most of the book. And I'll divide my part of the reading into two parts. First half I'll just read old stuff, and then the next part I'll read more recent.
But there's this funny, I've been listening, how I know you, and I know Robin, and I know Bill, and I know Al, and I know all these, but you guys I don't see you together ever. I mean, you and Robin, you don't hang out together at all.
Yeah.
And you don't get the same version of the story from any one of you. But it's, somehow there is this kind of, just quite by accident, wound up there and there and there and there.
Yeah.
And
When it was a smaller.
you're listening to this.
When it was a smaller world. Yeah.
This amazing.
Vancouver guys.
Yeah.
And they're all back here, which is even funnier. They're all back in town.
Well, you know, this area is starting to pull more and more people as well. The downtown core, the original heart of the city, is becoming home to some of the artists.
It's nice to be able to walk home from
the city's own artists.
For me.
Oh yeah. Well, you can walk to anything you need in this area. I'm really enjoying it. I moved down here last fall. But of course I've known this place for many years, since the first the new era first was discovered.
Yeah, it's just as grueling when you're inside it, when you're not sitting around talking about it, as it ever was. You know, it's cold and wet.
Yeah, that's not
and it's
nice
lonely and it's fucked up personally, and you know you can just sit there and think of all the ways in which you're fucked up. You know?
I know. Well, it was
the more years, the bigger the load. Yeah.
Well, Judy, it's nice. Judy Copperthorne dropped by one night, and it was really a surprise, I don't know why she did. She just dropped by. It was really, and we sat and talked, and she just was really great, and to me. But one of the things she did say, she kept on sort of giving me these words of advice as she was going out the door, and one of the things she did say was, it does get better, you know. It does, because we were getting really depressed about how awful, and we have no money, and no place to, everything's really, there's no money for writing, there's no money for this, and But she said, no, but it does get better, it does. It gets easier and it gets better. And I looked at her like,
Oh yeah.
no way.
It's exactly the way you get it. Exactly the way that you want it. If you actually want to stay here, you can have it, and you're running on dry a lot of the time. But the place maintains its dimension.
I think the city's just entering a new dimension. The whole scene is going to change around here in the next decade. We're in particularly interesting times. We're at the
You're
beginning
tuned
of
into another session at the big break. We're talking at this point about the big break between then and now.
then and then.
Yeah, and anything we said was up to now was about then. But,
And this is now?
and at a certain point there's a big break and it becomes now. Yeah.
Well, I like
But you just moved it, you were talking about tomorrow though.
I'm talking about the then that's tomorrow too. I'm very much interested.
What do you think is going to happen?
More art, more artists, more international audience, more world attention, more commerce and industry around here. I think we're at the beginning of a renaissance. Again,
We're
the
in
80s,
it.
we're in it. We're in
Definitely
it.
in it.
Yeah,
Definitely.
we're on a roll now, and from now until the turn of the century looks really interesting times to be a Vancouverite. It's in the arts community. There's going to be more facilities and more international events and more artists coming to this city to appreciate what's going on here. And
Yeah, but what is art? I mean, I wonder about that.
I like that.
It's coming.
What is it? It's really screwed up right now. Visual art is really screwed up right now.
I think
I enjoyed Stan's piece. There's always something
I did too.
smart there.
Isn't that weird?
Great. It's like watching the commercials and it's like
But you have to be very, very careful. Very, very careful with that kind of stuff. There's really...
Isn't art that little poetry reading we went to in the bookstore the other night with what's his name?
Yeah. Kassan
Kassan.
and Go sing. His dad.
Yeah, art's always been that. It's reading in a bookstore.
Yeah, well, poetry remains. Poetry maintains
is
that
that's good.
personal
Yeah.
dimension.
Yeah.
You know, no matter what the artists are up to or not up to, and but yeah, it's like there's no.
But the visual art is very, very strange right now.
There's not useful thought in it somehow.
I want to go back to light shows. That's why I look at a big potpourri.
Yeah,
that's
perceptual
swirling.
things. But these people are concerned with kinds of thought.
Yeah.
You know,
And the visual is just disappearing. Like the visual or the medium is like it's
perceptual quality of it.
It's so much concept and so much head and thought and philosophy. And I think it's a real need for like I don't know if it was you or we were talking about. No, Robin was saying we need the problem with art or anything right now is there's no philosopher. There's no thinking right now that we want to jump on some kind of bandwagon, whether it be a Renaissance kind of whatever or existentialist, whatever, but there's nothing it's all this is really referential. It's so referential in itself. No, it's not. It's like really void or no future.
Well, it seems to me that one of the things art is all these instances of thought being presented to philosophers to use as the material of such a philosophy, and so perhaps artists are doing that. They're presenting little tiny fragments of thought, but it's also but that is sort of perception-based somehow.
Yeah.
And not intellectual based, and so much of what happens has no perception in it at all.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, like, the philosopher is going to do the thinking. The thinking that the artist has to do is another order of thinking, which is not rational. It's not not only rational. The artist is permitted. The artists don't have to deal with reality. The artist can.
I think they do.
Do people have to? So we get the decadent scene where there is no reality, where the artists are desperately in their lives trying to create what they want of their lives. And so there's this great artificiality about the whole situation, socially. The whole, yeah, but you can't by definition be casual if you're trying to be casual. So the whole secret is to be intelligent.
Yes.
It's the whole secret is to be using your head, and you sit down and you forget how you look, you forget what you're saying, what you're doing, and you're only concerned with, you even forget what you're saying. You don't try to design how it is in order. No, you just go right to what you're thinking, or what you're concerned. You know what you're really concerned with. So it's so, because then it'll be interesting. Then it's people at their best are people when they're thinking.
I managed to get that across to them.
Yeah, mindful. You know, like we're coming right out of memory. We're telling stories. You know, making it, and the language of it tells itself. And then you can be eloquent.
As far as that was concerned, I wasn't even conscious of that camera. I blanked the camera out.
And so what we're doing with the video is much more than you ever see on television. Like Laurier Lapierre is never casual. He's always really serious, on camera, professional, and all that. We don't have to be professional in that way, and so much more can be said. And we can find, you know, we don't have to, you know, he will only be talking to somebody if there's something important to talk about. We can be more significant than that because we don't need anything important to talk about, because we can be humanly present, you know. That's not necessarily so.
I was a little tight when this first started out.
Yeah.
And then I forgot about it. I said to myself, just forget about this thing.
Yeah. I think Vancouver is easy for that. I notice that people who come from on the radio station, if they come from out of town, even though they're friends and I know them, but they're coming here from Toronto, they'll get very tense. You know, they'll get very tense and formal. And whereas I can pick somebody off the street, or a friend I can call up and say, come on down to the show tonight, and they've never been on the radio before, or they never do that kind of thing or whatever, and they're just, you know, there's a little bit of a breaking in moment, and they become quite natural. With the other people, they come in and they're all enthusiastic, and then they tighten up. You know? And there's just like we have a, we just don't, we aren't that self-conscious. We aren't that, we don't live in a world that's constantly pressing in on us nearly as much as people in bigger cities or in colder climates or in more serious parts of the society.
No, we're not constrained like a lot of them are in the Far East.
We still live in the frontier.
I loathe having my picture taken.
You do?
Mm-hmm.
Peter does that all the time. He never reads the profound stuff. We all know that Peter has his body of work at home, which is actually dealing profoundly with and directly.
Have you, Peter?
Well, I have actually, just not lately.
Yeah, right.
Just not lately.
Right.
It's like that.
Figure out a way to-
He won't publish. He's got this wad like that
Really?
of poems, and to get a little selection of them out, it's taken Victor Coleman and Coach House Press is still taking them. It's taken a couple of years almost.
That's my fault, not their fault.
And it's his fault because he has this
It's
body
so
of work.
private, isn't it, Peter?
Well,
Yeah, it is,
It's private. It's just sort of, as soon as I'm done with things, they sort of have a tendency to become sort of semi-embarrassing. Not in sort of,
Right.
not, I don't know if embarrassing is the right word, but just almost irrelevant in a way to
Well, that's how I
myself. No,
feel,
yes.
too.
It's,
Yeah, especially if I read anything that I wrote.
oh, I like my
it's a
while
lighting
back.
question, and they're the gods in this situation. I'll take mine.
Oh, we were instructed to take her
No,
makeup.
my stuff will be pretty simple.
Yeah. Well, in that poem, immediately, the human pleasure we get at making cruise missiles is there. You're riding it
Right.
like that, and that's a perception that I had in a poem that I just remember writing. I don't remember. I remember even the look of it on the page, but I don't remember the words. But it was 19 years old or 20 years old, and addressing the whole sense of all the rockets poised and whatnot as a fireworks show. And that this was it. This was glorious. Like that thing of blowing up the world. That's what we can do. And the pleasure of that. The pleasure of that.
It's pleasure for some.
Yeah,
Obviously.
yeah, and if you can't deal with that, that's the pleasure that has to be dealt with.
Yeah.
Like there's got to be, you have to consciously deal.
It's a cat.
Oh, yeah. Cat watch dog.
Yeah.
Poet watch
Oh,
cat.
that's Muffin.
Camera watch poet.
Love that cat's going.
It's the cat making the sound.
Yeah, it was a.
Anyway, and how long should this be?
What,
I mean,
you're
the-
reading or this afternoon?
Not today. I mean,
Oh,
The
how
reading?
long should you read? What would you say, Peter?
Is it just you, or are you
I
reading
don't-
with other people?
No, just Betty. I think that's what I assumed.
I've always found, in my own personal experience, that the shorter amount of time you read, the more grateful people are to you after
Right.
the reading because they can get to the bar.
I don't think it'll be terribly long. It'll probably seem like forever to me, but
A half an hour.
Half hour.
oh, great! I can get by with that.
Yeah, half hour.
Yeah.
And there will be an item about the cats.
Uh-huh.
They're always interesting.
Yeah.
People can, And of course, I'll tell the story, the little item of, that was in the paper about a fellow who took his cat to his friends to look after. And when they went to pick him up, they told him when they cooked it. The fellow told him he cooked it. He was hungry. It's true. I mean, this really happened just recently. You don't think it's funny?
It's pretty funny.
I wasn't listening. I was thinking. But somebody cooked up their cat?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, during the Paris Commune in 1870, they ate all the animals in the zoo.
Oh, no, I never heard of that. Is that right? No.
Well,
They ate the giraffes and the, and the hippos.
Well, the main item on the news yesterday was, as it happens, there was this family, American family, and they had nothing to do with doctors at all, never had, and the patriarch of the family died, no medication at all, and he died of went into a coma, and faded away over a long period of time. And the family would not accept that he died. Mom would go to him every day and feel his pulse, and yes, it's there. And his body didn't rot.
Yeah.
It dried.
Yeah, right.
It dried, and the limbs, the joints were loose, and they'd move him around the house into different places.
Oh, Jenny was reading that out of the Globe and Mail this morning.
Yeah, and
It's a whole family.
and the family, I think still believes that he's there.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's marvelous too. And there was
The
nothing
power of
illegal about it.
No,
You
and
can
they-
do what you want.
And they've taken put the body in a mortuary, but they're going to have to give it back to them because it's theirs.
Yes, that's right.
There's no law covering
No.
it.
Oh.
But there's the thing that strikes me about the poem is that and except no one told us. I mean, looking at the end seemed to tail off. No one told us.
I wasn't quite too happy with that line that I had.
Yeah, and the idea in it, or the thought in it, is that there is, we don't realize there's no one else but us to tell us. Yeah, that's the issue. Yeah, that no one told us. Well, it's only us telling it, and this is the telling of it.
Yeah.
What this poem is the telling of it. But that's more important than this is the end. Well, maybe this isn't the end, because
Well, I know. It's, yeah, right.
and so the
Eventually.
if I were looking at this, I don't know if I'd end if I'd stop there, but instead of that, except no one told us that this is the end, I'd put it, except no one told us. Well, I'm telling us now. Yeah. No.
You're rewriting your mother's poem, Gerry.
No, well, no. This is criticism.
Unfortunately, it's gone. The poem's gone. It's going to be in the bulletin or the.
Well, that's okay.
Well, maybe
writers
she
can
didn't
always
choose this one.
writers can always revise. But see, okay, this thing. It's I sit on the missile, my harness, my spirits, the glory of the. We've done it again. Except no one told us. Well, I'm telling you. Well,
That's my fault. You're right back.
what do you think, Peter? I mean, is there a way to punctuate the end of it? Because this is the end. This is the end. Is the that's the next line in the form set up as the form proceeds, as the thing proceeds. That is a ending of it, like the last line of the
Oh no, I should keep going on with it. But it's my.
I don't mean that this is the end so much that is there a better last line that you can?
Oh, well, I wasn't happy with that line, but I had to shoot it out.
Yeah, and it's like they wrote the song T for Two. I remember hearing once the composer saying, somebody said, we need a song right now. Here's the singer. Here's the the pianist. Teach them the song and write it simultaneously, and somebody said T for Two, or it went, words went by on the radio. So he said, okay, T for Two. Two for tea, me for you,
and you for me.
you for that's how that song was written. And he
Really?
clicked it out on the piano. And sometimes you write. Is this a bookstore?
Wow, aren't you John Cage? I've loved your music for years. Would you autograph my cassette?
on the bed, we held two hands apart from us, past our heads on the pillow, us bawling so hard down there, joined over as hands, balanced us like a ball, the grip from which point we watch the show, what lies on us, what hangs.
Well, since you're in the mood for love poems, I thought I'd whip Blue Moon on you. I've written your love song with my flashlight, each letter disappearing as I write the next. Light years now. It's an epic. The battery's exhausted, but there's more in the drawer. 10 more. I've sent your name to the stars, the tight little curve of your smiles. 186,000 miles per second. They'll know you drip love to your knees on Alpha Centauri 100 years from now. And what'll either of us know? So sure.
So sure, not funny.
Not funny. You know, just sort of, I thought I'd get a subliminal influence in there.
Okay.
The title of this moment in the movie is
Brownie's,
Oh, Rosie.
yeah.
Who's waiting for the first word. Okay, Danica, it's your turn. Cue Danica.
Poem. Say poem. Boom. Woof.
But then, and then I say, yeah, but a musical phrase has, has something that happens in it that has to do with time. It's like a line.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be the normal kind of progression we're going to work towards something being said in the poem, but somehow there is in a line that kind of there's going to be present. There's going to be a musical phrase. The phrase is going to be musical.
There's going to be a tone. I like that. I like that.
But maybe in kind of language writing, that's what they're trying to do is to try to break down that.
Well, when I'm talking about tones, I'm talking about looking at music as a scale.
Yeah, but I'm talking about writing though. I mean, yeah, music is something else. It has problems it doesn't have.
Well, no, I'm talking about writing too. I'm talking about there being a scale, a tonal scale involved in poetry. I think that's something that...
Well, but that's the thing, there is, when I write, and Kevin can't help it either, but there is a lot of writing and it just doesn't have that musical quality. It's coming purely from thought. Or it's against, or it's trying to write that music out of it. I have to assume that because there isn't apparent in it.
Well, if you're following an eight tone scale, which we here in the West assume is the beginning and the end of musical composition, that's one thing. But you're talking about people who work, who develop sound atonally. There are all kinds of different people in Bali have an entirely different construct of musical thought. So like. And I feel like that poetry and music travel on a very, very close path together, and I think that we can sell it short by putting it within the framework of what just the West perceives as sound.
Yeah.
Well, there always will be an aspect of sort of musicality in poetry.
Yeah,
of
that's
course.
something that has to be.
But it's recognized as such or not, But maybe in some respects, how it was recognized before, that's broken down because of a concern to actually sort of take in more social and maybe even theoretical concepts, get it into the writing because of the sort of cul-de-sac that lyric poetry was in for a while, So it's just maybe there are certain various attempts to try to expand the ground on which poetry can work.
Yeah.
I respect those. I'm glad people are doing it.
And how that works out in anyone's supposed career. Well, looking at it as a career is another way of looking at it as a story. And you don't want it to be that. You just want to get up in the morning and do what the day calls for. You don't need to have that sense of progress built into your life. But then as with the that the language is going to be intrinsically musical. It's going to be built into it, and so one's relation to that music. Well, if at the moment the people are trying to get around or ignore that or get that music out, they're trying to fight the musicality of it because they want
a different kind of.
And that's what I was saying about the art that you look at, and there's no music in it. I mean, there's no material quality. There's nothing given to the material quality of it.
So like the whole labor process, the process of making the art is sort of lost in some respects too, in favor of this fetishistic sort of almost postmodern formula maybe, or even if not, even if it's a unique work, the towards this surface in which the whole process of making it, the labor process, is invisible.
Well, the attitude that was panning Moby Jane in Books in Canada is beside the point. It's not what we're talking about at all. It's kind of like a...
Yeah, what is that? Just what...
I characterize it as it still expects the poem to be expressionist. Dylan Thomas, finely crafted according to rules of rhetoric, as taught in the English departments. Etc. All of that, and be intense statement, amounting, with kind of like abstract generalization built into it. You have to think up. I mean, the poet has to sum up what is being said, and what is being said has to be thinking, and the language has to be expressing kind of personal difficulty with language.
So on the one hand, I mean, that's an attitude sort of really easy to dismiss as irrelevant, even though it affects you and you get a book reviewed and it's horrible or something.
It's there to prevent the actual work from getting to anybody who might be interested.
Sure, but on the other hand, like you were saying about art, that someone wanders into a gallery and is confronted with certain work, whatever, and they have no way of relating to it. Is that a problem with poetry? Let's say your poetry. Do you feel that it's...
Well, it was with this reviewer.
It was with this reviewer, yeah. So obviously, people just aren't going to intuitively know what's up. I mean, they're...
But I think that
writing just as with...
but I'm astonished. But that's because it's not because the reviewer is general public. It's because the reviewer is coming from a very particular... and the viewer knows... That reviewer knows what he wants.
Yeah, he's got a sort of conscious ideological stance.
Yeah, and this just does not fit.
Yeah,
and in some ways is like appalling from that point of view. Yeah. But the general, to that person. But I think my work, anyone picking it up is going to find it interesting. Coming from a common point of view or an uninformed point of view. Is going to find things going on in it that are calmer than their normal life, more thoughtful, funnier, but perceptive in ways that say, yeah, that's what I sort of expected poetry to be, and not necessarily making abstract sense, not making sense as ideas.
Yeah.
And not necessarily revealing anything about me. Reading slugs. They're all around you, you see. Slap one on each eye, and the universe is twice as far away. So what's the use? That's what the cat's looking off his fur. The cat has careful instructions as to your location. He will deliver this as soon as he can. Be careful if you pick him up. He doesn't believe in gravity. Cats have it so easy these days. I see. Eyes are part of the brain. Live and learn. What more could you ask for? No, that's a better last line. What more could you ask for? Eyes are part of the brain. What more could you ask for? You're listening to Radio Free Rainforest. Yes, okay. Hey, I don't know which machine works. Sundays 9 o'clock, alternate Thursdays 4:30 to 5:30. Vancouver Co-op Radio, CFRO 102.7 FM, and on cable frequencies throughout BC, and on Washington State, but I don't know if it's on cable systems in Washington State. But when the marathon time comes along, we always get money. We've got Radio Free Rainforest got $100 US pledged from small town Washington State. One marathon there. Radio Rain, a Radio Free Rainforest, reading, playing, singing, saying, a magazine of the 7 deadly arts, poetry, music, painting, sculpture, dance, drama, cooking. The unexpected, the unexplained, the unexpurgated. Radio to clear your programs. Views, re and enter, bait, live, and D. Imagine poets taking over the station. The advice squad, speech bandits battling blinding forces of silence to bring you a free hour of instinctive rhythm and thinking. Completely the same, always different. Settle into the best seat in the theater. A bare inch from the gentle lips kissing your mind. The clean teeth chewing your dreams. Lean over the leading edge of BC imagery. Your listening creates these poems as truly as the writing gives them voice. There's ghosts in them, their words. Keep the language alive. Yes, but is, rain, Radio Free Rainforest, Sunday night at 9, CFR, Co-op Radio. Uh-oh. And Prismatic, Wednesday evenings at 9:30, and Fine Lines on CITR, Tuesday evenings, I think at 5:30. These are literary radio in Vancouver, and CBC Ideas. And the listener, turn on the radio when you get up at noon, and you're gonna, you get a lecture. And it's better than going out and buying the first edition of the Sun. And okay. Valentine's. There are so many occasions today, and Valentine's is just one of them. How's this? Ronald Frankenberg, an anthropologist with considerable experience in Zambia, puts the matter rather bleakly. Particularly in urban areas of South Central Africa, up to 25% of the population between 20 and 40 years old may be HIV positive. And in some areas also 5 to 15% or even more of pregnant women are. The implications of these figures are staggering. The urban elite, on whom further development and national economic recovery depend, may be decimated. The productive and skilled workers and educators may be rendered ineffective, and a whole generation made virtually unable to reproduce itself. Orphans and the elderly may be left without support, and achievements in the field of health may be made impossible to maintain. This is also a danger in poor areas of Southern Europe and in parts of Latin America, and even ultimately Asia. Eagle, hear me, coming, combing, long thoughts, and cook the sun, eat a word, eat your words, day, the narrow rowboat at rain in snake, rattle, go to bed early, wake lit, break fast, rise, stare. I take a quick drink of cold snap tap water from the tap to rinse my mouth out, and I feel the size of my mouth. Look out, the deeper the fish, the taller the pond. when writing made that possible.
That's right.
And so they have wanted to communicate something with, be home at 7, o'clock tonight, whatever. They on clay. They'd hand that.
It'd take them 2 days to
So be home at 7.
be home at 7.
Next week.
No, not. That's how we talk.
That's a wee joke. But back to the storytelling thing. I admired people up north who passed on the history of small communities in the north and how entertaining they were, while the wind was whipping around the place at 50 miles an hour and everybody had gathered in this small, you had to tell stories.
Yeah.
The Irish are great at it.
And storytelling, I think,
Ireland's in trouble, and part of it is that their great capability for telling stories,
I know, but all
they turn it into such a good story. Well, okay, that's where the Revolutionary War is being fought in the English language. It's being fought in Irish too, but that's where there's been warfare in Ulster in most of this century, or a lot of this century, and it's just mean, and it's a story. And one side is telling one story, and the other side is telling the other story, and nothing else is as important as those stories. And they're just stories.
And that's your point.
And that's my point.
Stories.
Yeah. And how can we develop, a language that doesn't have that built into it, because it's built into a lot of languages, and so like that, there's a lot of work going on in semiotics and deconstruction and philosophy and poetry, and of how to talk about the world, but the language is not telling a story. The language doesn't mean anything. The language is that gobbledygook. And then out of that come new, clean kinds of meaning. Jeff Dirksen, Peter Cully, me, Marlene, last night at the reading, were great at telling those stories. Each was kind of moving. Marlene was great. She did a stand-up comedy, and that's what she's writing. And I've got a tape of it. And it's quite good. It's like standing up there and just And I said to her, cut out the spaces in between. Speed it up. She said, well, you got to leave room for laughs and spread it out. I said, yeah, but Jack Benny and Bob Hope, they didn't have to. They had a lot of dramatic pauses, but they didn't have to. They did things very, very quickly. And anyways, she's working on it, but she's working on it basically as the writing. Have a way, or other cultures have a way of counting for a man from the death of the father is the year of his birth. And that's how old you are spoken of. And I should imagine it would work the same with women, except that they're probably not interested in such things. And it's like, didn't have that kind of a competitive attitude to dad, that you're just waiting, because you can't really be yourself until you can't really be out there all alone. Like, oh God, I'm out here all alone. But that just has a relation to parents. It's not a thing that's actually based on sex at all. But what is based? Yes, it is. What is the? I'm just told. I'm very. And so there's this. That's Moby Jane. Is this? It's the kind of hormonal or sexual or life force, or just pulling me under all the time. That's and that keeps happening. It happens in a couple of lines of a poem, or it happens in a section of it, or that plus the traveling of all the trips in it. Those are all very subtle kind of narrative motions, but they're all lines that are drawn out of the chronology, whether it's the intentional chronology as written, or how you read it, how you read it in and out. A friend, Anthony Benjamin, sitting, he said, I've been staring at this canvas for God knows. He said, and it was a painter, and it was a big canvas, and it was like a plaid or a tartan motif on it, and in greens, I think. And he just said, in or out, in or out, in or out. And and you looked at it, and you couldn't decide the ins and out of this. There was this kind of in motion illusion, and it was like an energy. You're looking at this thing that's giving your eyes this energy. It's like peacock feather dazzles the eye with the too much information. The eye can't cope with it, and so the eye goes zzz, and we see this iridescence. And language, writing poetry does that too. You can, in a thing, there's something that you can push it beyond the capabilities of the rational mind to keep up.
Well, that
so
works
that's
for
another
the
thing.
reader.
The book is too long. It's too long for someone who wants to figure everything out, which is like what you're supposed to do with poetry, Yeah. But at the same time, I want it all to be able to be figured out. I mean, there's thought that comes out of it all, but at the same time, another thing which this book is, which is a clear way to say it, is it's what I wrote that week. All the time. That's really what it is, or that season, or that month, or that day.
Yeah, so by stringing it together in this fashion, by putting it all together in a book, the pauses in the natural chronology have been shortened, right?
Yeah.
So that
everything, it's self-editing in that way. Everything that wasn't subject to writing or object of writing, we edited all that out.
Right.
Disappears.
Exactly.
As well as the editing in the writing itself. Of course, there's a lot that gets, we just weren't there that day. But as Thelonious Monk says, when I sit down on piano, I don't hit bad notes or wrong notes or anything. It's not within me. And so, because writing is very physical, just like artists are like that. I mean, it's like you don't waste paint because paint's expensive.
Well, that iridescence you speak of, I think, works for the reading at least as much as for the writing, because there is that complexity of the surface and that the constantly changing light and so many things to see and to hear in the language. So there is this kind of shimmering, which takes you back to the water and the swimming through the text that goes on too.
We were coming from a western, Max and me, down Granville along Dunsmuir to the Alcazar for a beer when the movie rose up fighting again on the street right outside the beer parlor. The big guy had half his gray silk dinner jacket ripped off his back, and the kid was bleeding and getting his head banged on the curb, and the fury of the hate they were locked in and wouldn't wait and couldn't stop, and each retreat smashed into words, pulling them together. We tried to yell it apart, blow it out, but our voices cracked. We weren't heavy enough to get between them. I went inside to get help and called Johnny out. We dragged the kid into the pub, and of course in comes the big guy after him. So what I accomplished is I bought the fight indoors. Johnny gave me a look to make sure I saw what I'd done. This is a native neighborhood. This is an old neighborhood. This is an artistic neighborhood. This is an addicted neighborhood. This is an oriental neighborhood. This is a working neighborhood. This is a food buying neighborhood. This is a political neighborhood. This is a religious neighborhood. This is a mental neighborhood. This is an indigent neighborhood. This is a siren-crusted neighborhood. This is the downtown east side in motion. This is an only neighborhood. There's a man walking down the red line. Two guys pass me before he finds someone to listen to him talk like a truck backfiring so everyone can hear that truck over there backfire on purpose like him picking up on it. When it happens in demanding of us sparks of all. Sparks of all! What does it mean? Figure it out! I figure that each word makes it to each sentence, and each sentence makes it to each time, and each time makes it to all silence. Only everything was always happening, says the hungry man. He just figures that if he can keep meaning what he says, he can butt into the line, says the tired man. You get a ticket, but you have to sign something says you don't get welfare for 2 months, says the worried man. Hi, Blondie, says the sad man. God ain't been the same since he got rode down, says the single man. What it means today is a salmon sandwich, a peanut butter sandwich, crust style skin, and a donut. If It means something each day for 60 years. Every once in a while a truck backfires. It's the Roman Catholic Church doing penance for its sins, says the sore man. A guy got killed in this line a couple of years ago, says the weak man. I went where I left my hat last summer, and it was still there, and I took it and left my wet hat there, said the wet man. That hash has bad oil, and it's everywhere on the continent. The CIA must have ate it up cheap out of Afghan Poland and traded it for weapons, and now it's getting its money out of it. Crusade against drugs or no crusade against drugs, says the cold man. Makes you thinking, just hungry about it, says the sick man. Some days it means bologna, some days Christmas dinner in sittings with all the trimmings, some days a chance to say thank you, says the old man. Comes the end of the month and the line goes around 2 corners and down the alley. The line is as long when I walk home past it with my score wrapped in wax paper in my hand at my side, visible enough to satisfy curious glances as the line was when I joined him. Long after 4, when it starts moving, by the grace of God, the Franciscan Sisters of the Atonement also have a daycare center for children. You used to hear backfiring all the time, says the lost man. I bet everybody who voted Socrates a job and a third of the NDP voters are the unemployed, says the used man. When was the last time you hugged yourself, says the ugly man. Bang! Figure it out, says the crack man. Written 14 years ago. Canada gave AIM leader Leonard W. America for Christmas. Canadian justice stinks, he said. It comes spring. Everyone's going to get out. All the farts are in for it. All American. Whatever is locking you inside, like those cut flowers in that jug, whatever panics you and freezes you and drives you and keeps you alone and in the dark, the whole of you, terrified because it really is winter now, and you can't go out in it because you don't belong there. It's light there, and your name has no soul, and the light will burn it up. Out there, people begin to die. Everything begins. The year begins. The people who can live there have that one thing going for them, but they can live there, out in the world, where you threw them when you made room for yourself to hide in, thinking it was them you threw in prison, but they're out, not doing any better than you can expect, but they are surviving, and you aren't. You have no out. You are barred in by every habit and trick and ignorance and device and dope and force and terror you think you can protect yourself with. You are the winter the people are living through, but you will be gone soon, and people will become spring. Seagull flies by line of eye to a crime of desire. I write this poem under protest. I could be bringing in the garbage, eating the carpet, melting down the TV, throwing the dirty dishes through the picture window. Here at the beginning of the rainbow, where us good guys live. The bad guys live at the end of the rainbow. Selfishness itself. We have a misunderstanding with them. We always miss. They always understand. Making away with their evolution. Getting crafty in their old age. Must have finally gotten stoned. Feels like our imaginations have been logged. BC, the quietest place in the language. This is what the free world is fighting for. The pacified coast, governed by Charlie McCarthy and the 40 Thieves. Is the poem over yet? I wish I wasn't so bad. But that's like wishing wealth hadn't become money, or compassion hadn't become power, or that our molecules would stop milling about. All this kettle needs is a spout. Do I have to spell it out? Will the seagull chase you? Only if you run, friend. Only if you run. The rabbit right has got all night. Bad luck rules in a land of fools. The joker can't stop laughing, lining us up in a row from here to fascism. Vandalism, the disaster, a power tool in the hand of what master? Social credits, a superstition, the fantasy garden of the Inquisition. Well, what do you know? There's nowhere to go. The creation of day, we open our eyes and stand in the way. This space leapt into a decision. Man, oh man, seagull struts away, a little whiter. This time, boy, oh boy, seagull cries and cries. This time, mothers and fathers, we come from right here. Remembering takes forever. No hurry. Forever gives today. No time to lose. Join the memory, a union of our work, a vote that counts. The only politics we've got left. Don't forget, we were slaves. The seagull circles the spot for us out on the Milo River. Poet chewed you on way back when, protesting the corrupt government of his day, let go his breath and leapt in, and we're still racing to the rescue. Here, say, a world away. What? We lost asleep. Who? Me? Yes, you will awake. Hungry? The next seagull you see saw you first. And I come up to that from probably an unusual direction. Is like having kind of theater as a one of the places where I could be free in my teens and where I could perform. I can get into that and to great effect, sort of thing. Made. And then dropping it because I wasn't interested in anyone else's lines. Then going off for a while and writing and learning to write, or getting into, just focusing on that, forgetting about everything else, and getting also into visual arts by being with artists and always being in photography. But in any case, getting back to readings at a certain point. In the early 60s, starting to get into readings. That's like, it's really only 5 years later, but it's a huger distance than between then and now, sort of thing. It's just that when you're young, things are that important. Time really goes.
So there's that
not slowly, but intensely. So intensely that it's huge.
That thing that happens though when you start to read your writing, and the writing transforms because of the reading of it.
Well, it's all so I was getting. I had this experience of poetry being oral, as well as growing up on radio. Good old CBC in the 40s and 50s, but also all the Jack Bennys and Bob Hopes and Fred Allens and Happy Gang, and there was this general but it's not radio. It's like growing up at home in an environment where people were talking all the time, where talk was what you got together. People were over for dinner. Dinner was great, but it was the conversation that took off, and after dinner, and sitting around watching the Ed Sullivan Show. Eventually, TV comes into that, and at that point, at the interface, it's always nice on the beach there, where everyone's gathered together and talking like mad, and then stopping to watch. The Beatles, and it wasn't the Beatles, it was much earlier than that, stopping to watch some, clown act on Mr. Wentz's, Senior Wentz's on the Ed Sullivan Show, with everyone together. After a while, TV and the world made it put everyone apart, or else the family grew up and went away, or nowadays families don't get together at all like that. Do they?
I don't know.
I wonder. I mean,
I'm not around television.
Maybe they get
or
around
families all that much.
Maybe they'll get happy families will get around the Cosby Show. Unhappy families will get around charades. I don't know. Or families that need to work things out. TV and video is such a part of life, but I sort of had that covered in terms of always taking photographs. And then eventually moving, working in TV stations and in film, and then making my own videos and films, and et cetera, and this is within that. But at a certain point, just because one couldn't afford the technology and the expertise, or get to the expertise, in the last few years I've been on this side of the camera. And performing, and once I started to read poems, it wasn't too difficult. I mean, there was a natural thing happening, and this is crucial. The poems are what I'd learned in the writing of the poems was to listen, and it was as I'd learned in with artists to see. Like I didn't have to do the drawing. I was there watching the drawing being done. That was my concern. But in relation to writing, I was there doing the listening, and simply characterized, even though it's described as just sitting listening to the movie go on, or the radio station in your head going on, including all the thoughts about things, but that's not where the poem's coming from. It's there, but it's what you learn after. It's what one learns after all that thinking, and so you get to listening for
What, the evidence of the thought?
yeah, for what there is to say. You know, what language there actually is for this. There's a lot of thought for this. There's a lot of humming and hawing for this, anguish or whatever thing. But what does the language have to say? What is there actually to say? And what there is to say is always very little. Yeah, like a poem.
But I you know.
And so the initial thing is one's thinking, but usually the thinking in my writing comes later. It's the hearing that comes first. When you put it on the page, then you get to think it. You get to see it in space. You trapped it in space. And could you hand that over, Michael? So it's a good question. 56, 66, 76, 86. Yeah, 30.
56, yeah.
Yeah, 56 to 86.
56.
32
Early
years
life
later. Yeah, this is great. 30 years ago, Gerry and I were in on black and white, live, total TV production. No videotape, no color. Nothing except our imaginations out of all the movies we'd been to. Part of a TV crew. So and you're still in the biz. You're still in, and so am I, but you are still in professional film, video production.
Yeah.
You started way back then.
I move furniture.
That's what you still do, is you know how to move furniture.
I know how to move furniture, yes. My back knows how to move furniture.
I was really good then. We're talking about getting into Aikido, but I can remember, just physically, just how I used to be able to hump flats and things around, without damage to myself, and at some points just doing incredible feats, moving flats that weighed 3 times as much as me, or twice as much as me.
But also feeling good about. Well, you were young then. You were 19, right?
You weighed 20 pounds more too.
Having a lively, young, well-exercised body in terms of just being an emaciated intellectual, right?
That's right. Here I am, holding up on the suit, trying to catch up. This week I wanted to read these poems, and last night at the Zayat's launching, new magazine launching at Octopus Books, I was gonna, but the audience was too big and really too big to be quiet in a very loud tone of voice. It's like this occasion demanded something. So I read.
So you didn't read it?
So I read something that had a good gallop in it. It's like a real, get this up to speed and listen to it. And I keep getting comments lately. People come up and say, you got me talking to myself. That there's that I engage another. That the writing engages another. It engages reality, like the images are happening at the right speed, and the flow of the language is the right speed, and if I'm reading it out loud, my voice is the right speed. And so this sinks into something some aptitude or something that's already there, and it turns into reality. It really gets into your mind and becomes part of the mind flow.
And you're saying it's infectious?
What you're thinking,
You're saying it's infectious?
Yeah.
Contagious.
But this set of
A
poems,
virulent poet.
this set of poems is.
Get on my soup.
Back. It's lovely.
No.
Yeah. Eat up your soup, Gerry. It's your soup.
I didn't feel like eating my soup.
Well,
oh God!
I will eat my soup.
Okay.
It's too good.
Because this is the picture. Poetry, Is this Mozart?
This is Mozart, yeah. Tokyo Kodo Ensemble.
Okay. And my poem's New Year. This is why it took me a long time to find the title, but that's what it is. It's writing since last New Year's, which is only like 2 months away.
You finished with this?
No, I'm going to talk on the veggies here.
Chopping is too loud for the mics.
Forget it.
So it starts, sitting down to a brand new typewriter, and it goes like this. Test run. Time to book a start, to tidy straight up and down the work shelves, flick the dust and other accumulations of opinion out the door, make a space and put this big old Olympia office strength manual dactylograph I've inherited from Bob there. See, it works. The cats don't work, and it's been 25 years yesterday since I've worked, but the water heater works as long as the sediment filling its cracks doesn't get blown around by too many baths. The furnace and stove and the beds and chairs and the chairs and windows and the doors and stairs and tables and the books and radios and the toaster and popper and maybe one of the irons and some of the clocks and some of the sinks and some of the tape recorders and some of the toilet and some of the umbrella and some of the art and some of the floor and some of the roof work, or were the last time, the first place, the next chance I get. It's cold, so have I. I type fast enough to blow this scum off the top of my head right onto the page. You're just looking. Then it's okay, as long as no one is listening. I just wrote in by hand from last summer and my arm is really tired. The desk over there worked so well. Pen on paper, warm rush of air from the furnace to lean back into, the modern little antique Olivetti with the preoccupied ribbon at hand there or upstairs at the window, on hand, in hand, off hand, as needed. Tape recorders waiting like a freshly washed beach. Deep piles of urgent paper and important books rising all around me. Big warm photo flood shining down on the plate glass blotter among the pencils and pastes and clips and stickers and cherished letters. The cats under it all. On the brown sweater, on the brown box, and on the green pillow on the green and rolling and leaning secretary's chair with the drying sweaty green socks hooked over the chrome bar at the back and the pillow always warm and furry. I do what I can't, undo what I can, outwish the rest. I give all the energy I've got into the intensity and focus the writing takes. Last time, next time, don't count on me for anything else. This writing, even this, is all I'm going to do. Happy to see you, anytime. Talk, read, think, walk, eat, sleep, dance. I love you. My lover has taken a vow of silence and asked me to overcompensate while she's away. Then it'll be my turn, not to say that I would love to live some other way. North, a good steady view from Olympia here, close to the loudspeakers in the west, above the place the computer sat. It was too fast. I want more time beyond what's on my mind, but not fast enough to wait. It's the new year and the house is tidy and I'm in my separate place to write. The old clutter was beautiful. It grew to a great age. There are no photographs. I didn't hear all of that, but I heard some of that. It was amazing. And that's like an introduction to the poems. That's the setting in which these poems are mostly written or found or taken off small pieces of paper, put on big ones.
Pretty true stuff. Just true, plain truth.
Lovers.
Also very calm, observant stuff, kind of. I can relate to it in terms of a kilo of just sitting in whatever space you're in and lovingly, slowly going over the texture, panning the mosaic, right?
And it's a thought, and there's almost always thought of the language, thought in.
Oh yeah. That gives it.
The language is the material. We know our materials.
No, but I'm relating to the visual, right? And but you also, I mean, the language is certainly evocative of that.
Yeah. Both
How much?
time.
Okay, now let me interrupt
but
you.
they're long pieces. They're each is like a 40-minute piece.
All right, let
and
me
I probably
interrupt
read both of them, and it was just outrageous.
All right, but now how much?
But each was a complete.
How much is poetry and how much is ego? I'm on the stage. I'm going to command this stage until everybody falls down on the floor.
There'd be a lot.
Is exhausted, totally exhausted, and I will have dominated this stage. How much of it is that, and how much of it is just the ego into your poetry, and then it can't stop? There's no stopping it.
Yeah.
I don't know which way it goes.
Well, for ego, there'd be a lot less ego if there was a lot more public attention. Because what the ego is, it's the you know, thinking of it as the force which keeps one going. So I'm doing and you're doing, we're all doing.
We grew up
what
in
we
Freud's
started,
age.
What
we grew up in Freud's age.
We grew up we're doing what we started to do. We're still doing it. You know? That's a common thing, and people are like that. You know, the great strength. It's not that you've made a decision, but William Carlos Williams said, you know, at a certain point he made a decision to, you know, work like mad.
Okay, let's stop this man from jabbering and let me focus it on a little patch.
Yeah.
I was introducing Gerry, and he was picking up his poem, and I was saying, "Hey, Gerry, thus and so, thus and so, thus and so." He didn't hear me. He was into the poem he was just about to read, and was totally focused on that poem. This is Gerry's strength. He was totally focused on that poem. And he didn't hear me. I was giving you a little aside, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You're just talking to some people out there, giving some information or give them a little bit. No way. He was focused in, and he read it that way. Now this is what I love best about Gerry, but at the same time, I don't understand his miscalculation of time with audience. Now, we're coming right back to it. Explain it again. There have been times, Gerry, when I was thinking...
Like hour 25 of tape. And so this is it. You know, it's like, the audience has been sitting here for a solid day. There is a audience somewhere that will show these tapes, and we'll start at tape 1 and we'll just play everything. Even when there was no sound, even when there was no picture, we'll just play everything.
Answer my question. Answer my question.
Okay, if there is an answer to your question, it has to be...
tell me what my question is first.
Why do I go on too long? Why do I insist on going on too long? You know, like it's almost it's almost a question of why am I still doing what I'm doing? You know, but I figure
this. You understand?
Poetry is the senior service.
All right.
Poetry is the senior service in the arts.
In the community.
And in the community.
You mean in the community?
Yeah, I mean in human society. No. There are lots of other
poetry
things,
poetry has as its province language, and everybody has language. Therefore, it's the senior servant.
Everyone has to have language. Yeah.
Right. Anybody can understand a poem, not necessarily a painting or or musical composition, but they can all understand a poem if they've got 100-word vocabulary.
And so, so there's that. There's also, you know, so the poet will go on, but there's also, just formally, it's interesting. You know, the point at which one stopped listening. After 2 hours or an hour and a half, after that hour and a half, the point at which you stop listening is an really interesting way to listen. Like what I'm tossing you into is it's like you can't hear anymore, you don't like it, you're not going to pay any attention to it, but it's going on, and you're listening to it. And so this, you know, if you sit down and read that piece, you're bringing that energy, you know, you already have an experience of that energy of it. You know, the text survives that. It's not because it was there was something wrong with the text. No, it was furthering the language. But you know, and I also have a sense, you know, and so I'm saying I have a positive sense of irritating the audience, as John Cage would say. Art is irritation, and at this point, it ceased to be literature.
Well, do you just want to be a bad boy then?
It ceased to be literature, and it's become art at that point, and it's become like an irritation. Like this is not meant to lull you into the pleasure of the language.
So you'll go on and punish the audience.
I'll go on. No, it's not punishment. It's simply the other side of the situation. Let's see how long it takes. And there's also let's see how long it takes me to bore you. And use that as a measure of.
Well, do you mean that they should, at a certain point, if they get bored, they should either go to sleep or walk out? Something like
There's
that.
that. Yeah, empty the room. I had a reading at UBC. Maybe you were involved. I read Phone Book in the 60s, and that was a piece, and I read it through, and it was like a noon-hour class, and I wasn't nearly finished at all. And the next class was coming in, but a lot of the audience hung in there in one of those big lecture things, and the next class came in, and I didn't give them a break all the way through. The next class had to wait for 10 minutes and hear whatever this was going on, and then I finished the 49 poems.
Thanks.
And and that was a sense, but that was like, and that's another answer to your question is there are some people in the audience who are still listening, and another answer.
Now explain something to me. That means you're willing to grind an audience. I'm putting this in negative terms so people understand. To grind an audience down so there are 4 people left who are your real pals in the first place.
No, they could be 4 strangers. They're 4 strangers who I'll never see again.
Oh no, I don't mean you know them.
Yeah.
I mean the only reason they'd hang in there, since I'm being such a bastard, just reading, the only reason they'd hang in there is because they're interested in what I'm reading.
Yeah.
Now, would you settle for 4 and drive 200 out of the audience?
Yeah, and
so you're like John Cage.
Yeah, in that way. But there's another. What was the other? Something that came to mind there. It'll come back. Those 4 I might never see again. Never see again. That was something.
Do you settle for that?
And so it's.
Say that happened. Say you read to an audience like that, and 150 people walked out just absolutely exhausted or whatever, maybe liking it or not liking it, and 4 little people are sitting there, and Jerry's got another suite. He's going to read another suite. He's got some more to say.
Yeah, and
he reads it. He reads it.
Another sense of it is that I'd like a poetry reading to be like a jazz concert. Like in a club, and you know what's going on there. There's the bar; it's in the same room.
Yeah, but now
there's the sound system, so the music is never threatened.
But are you being 1960s nostalgic?
No.
This
is like the 2160s too. There'll be a room, and there'll be jazz musicians playing. There'll be musicians doing it with the actual physical instruments, and just as much electronics or ESP as necessary, but the actual physical stuff will still be what works. Because when I listen to jazz, I open my legs. I want to be. I want my whole body to be.
You got a problem.
To be there.
You got a problem.
And so in that context, in that when you're with that music, you're free. You are only there. The assumption is that the people
Did you get the punctuation in that?
Okay. It's a decision to be there.
That's Jerry's punctuation for what he wants to say.
You're only there because you decided to be there. You don't have to listen if you don't want to listen. And in that context, the music can't go on too long. Or the poetry can't go on too long because people are free to stop listening and go to the bar and have a drink and
all
go
right,
next door and rock and roll.
Let me shut your chatter down and ask you this: do you believe what you just said, or do you like the control of audience?
I like.
No.
Do I believe what I just said? I believe what I just said.
Or do you like the control of audience? Now, just answer that carefully. Do you like the control? I know you can control an audience.
I can control an audience.
I've seen you do it several times. You're one of the best. But I want to know, is that what you like?
No.
It may be.
What I like is what I just said, which is you're in a space and the audience is free to listen to you or not to listen to you. And when it, and poetry in that way is like, it doesn't have to be in a bar. Like jazz jazz is the senior service there. In my experience, that's the place where you can be most free to listen or not to listen, and no one's threatened if you're not listening.
Let me cut Gerry off. You always have to cut Gerry off. You just have to cut him off because he'll talk all night. I tend to agree.
It's 1 o'clock the next morning.
Now, I think you actually mean what you say when you say, I'm not trying to control the audience. If 120 left, that wouldn't bother me. If 4 stayed, then I'd feel good.
But the audience that wants to be controlled, I control. If they want to be controlled, I control. If it's an occasion where we've come to be carried away by the words, I'll do that. But on some occasions I say, no, that's not what I'm doing today. What I'm doing today is simply examining text, and it's very dull.
No, what's your control then? What's your control?
It seems to me that, that you're in relationship with your audience in some way, that's as important a thing as that is happening as anything to do with what you're saying.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. That's all I really want to do is get up and just do the exchange of energy that is at the essence of performance.
Fellini film?
Yeah.
Well, I remember they're on shipboard and they're going to scatter the ashes of the greatest singer and soprano in the world, and one of the people on this ship, this crazy ship, is this woman who's like number 2, trying harder. All her life she's been trying harder. Right. And at some point somebody says to her, the great prima donna, or the great singer who we're burying, she used to say that she was an instrument of the music, of her voice. And she didn't ever have to try to do it. She just went out and did it. And she just, she kept herself in shape for it, and worked on it. But she was working on the instrument so that this force could go through her. And you, the person with the ambition, you're trying to use your voice to be the greatest. And it's and that is never as great. That's never as real as somebody who just gets up there and lets it flow through, lets it get going, and you don't need to be an actor, with good writing, or the language, or that's where the work is done, and then you can just let it happen, so it isn't a matter of getting up there and say, I am now going to, shift into a real low gear and then wham it right. It's not like. For me, anyways, it's I just trust that the words are going to do it. And you know the tune. Having read it before, you started to discover where the real music is in this.
Yeah. There's everything. I mean, it's not really. I don't know. I agree with you, but in a way, I think you're making it sound like kind of mystical or something.
Yeah.
Like there's some like divine.
Yeah.
I mean, not really, but even just a little bit.
But the language is so old and so ingrained in us, and it's a structure of so much of us that it's like giving into that. The performance of it, the reading of it is like giving in to that, plus all that pointed thought, all that work of actually figuring out what you're going to do.
Yeah, and then the whole structure of just, when somebody decides to stand up, is like to separate themselves from the audience, which is like the mass sort of thing or whatever. And that's a pretty precarious position. And
powerful too, though.
It's very powerful. Yeah. It's also, you have to be. First, I really thought that was really something politically incorrect or something about that, because I thought, the audience is really suppressed and they're just sitting there, and I'm working out all their, unexpressed desires and fantasies. But then I decided that was really wrong, and that the audience they do something, they have their thing to do, and when I'm an audience, I enjoy it. I'm not oppressed. I'm having my own experience, your own inner voice, and the audience is very active, and if they don't recognize their activity, or whoever doesn't recognize it, well, that's a problem. But the problem isn't that there's performers and audiences.
And what the audience hears is not necessarily what's written.
Not at all. Not at all. The audience hears a lot of things.
It ends with, I read it to Al, the piece I read to Al, Michael, which is just sitting down at the typewriter and writing. It's just like, line, not as verse, but just and folding into that a lot of what I'd heard and what had been said and whatnot, and it gets going about halfway through. In a way, it starts to have its own life, and then towards the end, the last half and the last quarter of it, really get going, and there's a, and Al Neil heard this, and he talked about that part being some kind of a romance. There's some love story going on in there that he was hearing, but all of the pieces were picked out of like people coming up to me after readings and saying, after a guy came up after reading and said, it was great, you know, you get myself talking to myself, you know.
Yeah.
And or somebody else, you know, people having funny responses like.
Well, that's the thing with the voice too, is because when, I mean, the response is the inner voice, right? They have, everyone has a voice in their head that runs along.
Yeah.
The thinking voice, but you don't, you think in a voice, not, there's a real weaving that happens there.
Yeah, and somebody else came up and said, you know, you got, you know, like you got you were totally in sync with my thinking voice, you know.
But that's what's different
my
than
saying
on the page,
this in this piece was interpreted as this was a conversation between lovers, you know, and yeah, when you're in it, you're setting up the situation that is very much like that. It's like, you know, you're setting out something, and people have another. There's another voice as well as their own voice. They're that close, and you got to use the sound system and all the resources of the language to get through to it. You know, to people, to get through all the noise. But you really are sitting down in people's minds, or you know, offering, doing this physical thing of entering someone else's head, and with that kind of sincerity, you know, the premise of poetry, it's just so direct. You know, it's bottom line. You just start from scratch, standing.
Well, that's what's different though. When reading poetry, like when you're reading something. Well, your inner voice is going a bit, but it's not going as much as when you are hearing something, because it's just a different activity, because you're not, you're imaging in a different way than what you're doing when you're looking at a page and stuff.
Well, this is I think that reading poetry is a skill in its own right. Like always say, riding a bicycle, and you fall off unless you're in motion, and people keep stopping and wondering why it doesn't work, because they hit something that they can't quite make sense of, and instead of going on, they slow down at that point and fall off and toss the book away and never.
Well, they really think I think when people do that, they think that people are right with them. They don't really understand that people are sort of in a flat plane over them, or it's not that people have just heard that last word and they've caught up with all the other words, and it's not that linear, right? It's all just happening at once. And if you're stopping or whatever, I mean, people aren't going, okay, I'm right with you. They're behind you and ahead of you and jumping on and off the train.
And there's a
going somewhere completely different.
Sure, well, that's some of the best performances I've ever been at. I saw Pauline Oliveros the other night, and I mean, I had a great time, and I really liked it, but I wasn't really thinking. I had some great ideas, and I think that's because of her music, and it was great music, but I wasn't really with her music a lot of it. I was coming and going, and it was good in that way.
And it allows that.
It's totally open to that. It's very meditative. But just about performance too. I mean, performance is the stupidest thing. It is very, like, that it's mystical, that it's anything to do to stand up, and you stand up and it goes okay, and people, you've got such charisma. And once it goes okay, once you get it happening and you're not scared and you stand up there, it's really easy, because everyone wants it to work. No one wants to see you. It's really uncomfortable to see someone really, like, not do too well.
Well, you have a lot going for you. I mean, like when you're up there's a great deal going on.
The whole structure is there.
That you are getting in motion. And that's your...
Including the agreement between you and the audience.
Sure, and if they lose it bad. Like if they start to go, and you can get it back. You can play off that. For sure.
But it's that thing about making friends or feeling at home or something at any rate somehow. It's as if the audience becomes like each individual is. I don't know, there's this personal sense I have when I'm at home in the performance, where I really feel like there's a kindness. You know? I don't know how, and they don't feel like strangers.
The audience is the enemy.
Yeah, I know you said that, but I don't necessarily always believe that, because they do want you to do
They don't, sure.
Well,
they already believe by the virtue of you standing up there that, I mean, at first at least, they're going to think it's going to, then that you know what you're doing, or you're something's happening. Something's happening up there. I don't know. I think it's pretty.
Yeah, but when they're clapping, I don't take it too personally.
Oh no, clapping's something they want to do. That's part of their activity.
Yeah.
They only clap. Like, it drives me crazy when people, they can't stop them from clapping between poems.
Yeah.
I find that so bothersome. But they just want, it's like people on TV shows, they clap so they can be in the TV show. It's the same thing. I mean, they like it, they'll clap more.
Oh, they're putting the performer on. Or,
Or whatever. It's just, it's not to do with, Well, it's just part of, everyone's got their thing to do. I don't trust clapping either. I mean, I don't distrust.
I've heard poets who do trust it, and people seem to be liking what they're doing, and they get sort of giggly and and excited by that.
That's good.
And the rest of the reading, they're sort of like think that they're just on the verge of stardom. And it ain't so. The audience was just keeping his hands warm.
Oh sure, And, it's part of getting it going. We'll get a clap.
Yeah, because they want to they want to get it on too.
Sure,
but then you can tell when you've hit.
Oh, you can tell when it's going really well or whatever. But even so, it's like, well, my thing is, I used to be really nervous on, what if it doesn't go good? But if it doesn't go good, well, you're still the same person the next day. You wake up and your friends are still your friends,
and what the words were saying. It goes back to that, and you say, well, I did terrible, but I put the words out, and they're there. There's something definite going on, something definite being said, and that I in some way meant.
Sure,
they put this together, and it does something. It's a thing in the world
that big a deal.
Yeah.
And then somebody will come up to you and go, boy, or whatever. No one ever says anything, but then the next time you do a reading, somebody comes up and goes, oh, that was a good reading. That last time I saw you wasn't so good, or I had heard all those poems before. I'm glad you got some new poems, or it's never you find out later.
Yeah.
It's like,
you got to keep in motion.
Yeah. But
Yeah. The camera is rolling. It's pointed at me. It's very subtle. It could be pointed at all of us, but it seems to be pointed at me. But what is essential? What should we be talking?
What should you be talking about?
I want to hear. I don't want to talk.
He wants to stop talking. He's come here to stop talking. Ladies and gentlemen, you hear it right here. Gerry Gilbert wants to stop talking.
He wants to be able to hear. That's what he wants.
Oh, that's what he wants. Oh, he doesn't want to stop talking. He wants to talk and hear.
He wants to be able to
just like the rest of us.
give the attention that is necessary to listening.
How to read.
We all know how to read. We read Ezra Pound when we were 3.
You read that Duncan poem really amazingly.
Oh, really? Oh, the first one, I was in a funny way kind of like growling it rather than singing. My mother would be a falconer's. Because I couldn't quite hear.
I never heard you read that way ever before.
Heard me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
In that voice.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
it was so.
Reading Duncan. The second poem.
I don't like Duncan reading Duncan, so it'd be interesting to hear Gerry reading Duncan.
But what I was saying, I was hearing Duncan, but I would have been happy to have given it to Duncan's voice as I accurately could hear Duncan's voice reading it. I got into my own voice reading it. It was. It was like this is me reading it, and so it's an extraordinary quality.
But your timing was not the way you usually read.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it was.
No, I was hearing Duncan and not a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in that way I was hearing Duncan. I was being ferreted. This is how, and that's how it's notated. You just have to give it the voice. That's how you'd say that. If you said it out loud, that's what it would sound like. But there's a great deal I've learned from Robert Duncan.
Yeah, he's quite tough.
He said.
And that
Robin Blazer. Oh yeah.
That conversation that you had to keep putting on and on. because the other tape wasn't coming through, and so you had to keep putting that conversation on with.
Oh, I missed that.
Duncan, and it would just get more and more revealing, and it was amazing in that way. I mean, I was glad you were forced to play more.
Yeah. And so it became
and psychologically
a mix.
It was so interesting.
Psychologically?
Yeah, not so much what was being said, but, Robert Duncan.
Talking about Radio Free Rainforest, the 13th of March 1988.
You didn't hear the show? Too bad.
I was watching something else.
Conversations with Robert Duncan.
Anyway.
I can't even remember what it was.
And so that's what there is to read, and to read aloud great poetry. To say it.
That's all there is to do.
That's what there is
all
to do.
On earth, and all you need to know.
I mean, it's like when you're out walking is a good time. If it's a good time that's why if you have it by memory, then you can go for long walks and recite to yourself hours and
I
hours
wandered
and hours.
lonely as a cloud that floats on high over fields.
And you have done that?
No, but I saw Rumpole of the Bailey on TV do it last night. He was walking through the courts of law in London in his Dickensian way, and he was reciting Shakespeare to himself.
Trees fluttering and dancing.
Until somebody came up and started talking to him.
I want to be challenged.
Me neither.
You want to be challenged?
Yeah.
Oh,
good.
Rhoda, we got to challenge Rhoda now.
All right.
Well, get a shovel. We'll go and dig some manure.
What could it possibly be?
Well, I give up.
He gives
I'm
up.
out of the,
He's out of the running. He just doesn't
I'm out
want
of
it.
the races.
Well, you know, you can die. You guys can all die. You know? Well, it shows how ineffectual and stupid art is. You know, how useless and what a waste of time it is.
What shows?
Well, just whatever we do together. I'm challenging you.
Dreadful.
I'm challenging you.
Well, what do you think?
Riding the dog. Westerlies. I'll call it all off. I decided one night 2 weeks before the Moby Jane tour, Calgary, Regina, Winnipeg, Toronto, Saskatoon, Edmonton. Gray all the way around, hound. I felt like a tree. I didn't want to go anywhere. True enough, when I got back, all my comfortable old habits had unraveled, but I got a grip on myself, letting go of Vancouver, and here I am on the Calgary Regina overnight, no smoker, already showering the elderly woman in front of me with cassettes and a carton of High C and apologies while I get what it takes to write in the dark out of my bag in the rack, thinking about Alberta at the Halloween benefit bash for Syntax. Snow White cancelled at Theatre Calgary. She said to me, "Imagine a huge peanut inside your head so big it sticks out the sides," which I did. So that must have been what she said. "Now what do you see?" she demanded to know. I was so tired I shrunk from the bedlam of hilarity around us and said, "I give up." "Balls," she said. "You're seeing through your balls." That's what I thought she said. Don't think. Right. All right. Everything from here on in tastes real good with gravy. I made my first solo gravy Saturday night. Heather cooked the chicken and everything else. It was stirring. I remember the pepper. That was the night I talked all around the table, binging on the loud laughter of writing ideas down the rapids so fast I could almost see another river joining. If you could only listen far enough. Alberta and I came very near. I'd caught her her mine, eyes in the milling about. The poets were being hooted at that night, so I read the fuck poem full blast at the surly crowd, out in all their deadliest drag and rotting to rock, and it was almost enough. But the best line I've had yelled at me was, "Eat more meat," at an Alexander Street gig a few nights ago. There I was, as usual, doing the reading I'd intended, but for once giving the poetry its head, letting go the reins and hanging on to the mane, and it only stopped when it was said, the hottest reading I'm destined to give all year, but I stomped off to a corner feeling stupid and hopeless and ultra weary from the night before. The music had been on my side overnight from Van, smoking all the way, cheek to cheek strangers swaying together, sleep 10 seconds on, 10 seconds off. I thought the road turned to the right more than to the left, and he, when the Rockies had dawned on us, said he'd felt sure the road did more left turns. We'd both survived the guy about 30 behind us doing the talking half the night about the wisdom of turning yourself in so you can get on with your life, your freedom to make $12 an hour, all there needs to be. He can take care of the rest no one's getting, advising the kids behind him to turn themselves in, to get it over with. No way, man. But you'll get nothing just boosting cars like 30 hours community service. No way, man. There's a whole lot of talking going on in this country. Best to stick with what's being said. Everyone's saying it differently. Leave my hair alone, I think I said, fending off his boots coming up over the seat behind the other half of the night onto me and my neighbors' heads. It won't work. It didn't. That's no way to make the world bigger. Clouds of story. The woman across the aisle berates her companion, the man beside her, all night. It's like being in their bed. She stirs away at what he will not say. He is protecting someone from her. She can't refinish her story, tells it over and over. The West as what we refuse to agree upon. Like the new Calgary bus station, a cab ride from downtown. Alberta had blood on her sock. We simply danced into the moment she entered, vanished into the moment I left. Reading Kropotkin and Zaz and Mutual Aid at 23 in late 80s Canada, thin and pale, life in art, roots round up at one bar, animal slaves at the other. Everyone gets a provincial itch. I was listening to the poetry, but I was watching the head of the wolf on the wall snarl. The Great Plains doomed to buy $1,000 worth of Moby Janes from me, riding around Calgary on Kevin's calm and positive mountain bike, on Murdoch's warm and pensive radio show, on Sarah's high and fertile fictioneering, on Margaret's testimony to the stillness of the truth this land gives women. I was expecting a reading. The audience needed theater. Bus fare. Digestive biscuits, figs, peanuts. I lost the knot from my hair, so it's flying to Regina, so dry. As long as it's dangerous enough, we'll trust each other with our lives. Alberta saw that I needed a costume, so she burnt this hole in my hat.